Hey everyone, it's Dr. Russell and welcome to our first video for 2020. Since it's the new year, I figured it would be most appropriate to talk about the different kinds of diets, since people tend to, for their New Year's resolution, focus on eating healthy, losing weight, getting healthier overall, and diets and what you eat is a big part of that. So I'm going to talk briefly about the 5 most common diets that I see in practice, and then the pros and cons. So the first one we're going to start with is, I think probably the most popular right now is keto. So that's short for the ketogenic diet. And keto has actually been around for over 80 years, so it's a kind of an older type of diet. But keto originally was developed to help children with epilepsy and treat them. So it was a very, very high fat diet, very low protein, very low carb, and these kids had to be monitored because it was such high fat. I think 80% of their calories, if not more, were from fats. Nowadays, the way we do keto, or the way most people are doing keto, is really more like an Atkins diet. So it is higher fat, but it's also high protein. So it's really focusing on reducing carbohydrate intake and focusing on good healthy fats and proteins. So as far as that, it does help with weight loss. It helps with blood sugar regulation and insulin, which is a good benefit and is also going to indirectly help with weight loss from that. As far as the cons, it can be really difficult to follow just because, you are reducing carbs at a significant amount. There are lots of other issues, especially with increasing the protein amount and fats. So you can have gallstones, kidney stones, you can have bone thinning, diarrhea, constipation, so bowel issues, abnormal liver functions, and then something that I see, and it hasn't been as well researched, as menstrual irregularities. So I have seen some women that go really extreme with keto that they totally mess up their cycles. So it's something you want to think about for yourself if you're a female considering that. So that's keto. The next popular diet, which I think it was more popular a couple years ago, and I think it's still relatively popular, is the Paleo diet. It's also called the caveman diet, Stone Age diet, kind of anything Neanderthal that we think about. So Paleo is really focusing more on high proteins and high fiber and really eliminating any grains and kind of processed foods. So no, candies, sweets, anything like that, anything that came out of a box. It's really focusing on proteins and fibers and things like that. Paleo is good for weight loss as well as blood sugar and insulin regulation. So just like with the ketogenic diet. And also, because you're reducing grains, for a lot of people it helps reduce inflammation, and inflammation is associated with lots of different diseases, not only just heart disease and arthritis and things like that, but also mental health conditions as well. So it has that benefit. As far as cons, it is really difficult to follow, especially if you're not eating any processed foods. That means you have to do a lot of your own cooking on itself, which can be kind of a challenge. And then since usually with higher protein, people are focusing on getting more meat, so making sure you get good quality meat is important and you're not just eating, meat that was fed corn and grains themselves. So that's another concern. The other thing that some people have argued, which I think is interesting, is, back when Paleo, caveman people were eating, because of agriculture, our plants are very different. So what they were eating versus what we are eating, there's no way it could even be the same at all just because of how plants were. Broccoli wasn't a thing back then. All the brassicas, cauliflower, we've created those plants since the Stone Ages. So, it's not really totally comparable, but it does have some benefits, just more hard to follow. So that's the Paleo diet. And then next, even though it's an older, back in the 70s and then, throughout the years, it still sticks around as the Atkins diet. So like I said, that's really similar to how keto is done nowadays. So it's really essentially low carb. It can be challenging because you are counting carbs, so you're really, really strict on limiting them. The other thing that's hard that a lot of people have issues with Atkins is it is a phased diet. So there's, I think, 4 phases. You kind of have to start more strict and then slowly go out of each phase. So people tend to just go low carb and then, go off of it. So that can be challenging. Atkins, just like with keto, can help with blood sugar and weight loss and insulin regulation because you're not getting all those carbs, so that is really beneficial. The downside of Atkins is, like I said, you're counting carbs, which can be a pain in the butt to do. It takes time, it takes effort to plan. The other thing is Atkins does allow processed foods, so if you go to their website, they even have all their kind of Atkins shakes, Atkins frozen meals, Atkins, whatever, the list goes on and on. So there's lots of things that still are processed in there, which can be problematic on its own. So that's Atkins if you're not totally familiar with that. The fourth diet is a more popular diet, probably not quite as popular as keto, but I would say second to it, and that's intermittent fasting. So that's different than the last three because you're not really focusing on a food group, you're focusing more on when you're eating, the timing of eating. So intermittent fasting just means you fast intermittently. There's many different versions of intermittent fasting. The most common one is to avoid eating for 16 hours and then only eat for 8. So maybe you don't eat, all morning and you eat from noon to 8 p.m. So it's relatively easy to follow just because you fit and eat into those times. It has been shown to help with weight loss and some insulin regulation. I would caution people that have hypoglycemia though, because not eating for a long period of time can kind of make things hard with your blood sugar regulation. The other thing that I don't love is a lot of the intermittent fasting studies I've seen have been done on animals. I don't see as much on humans, and even the ones on humans I don't see as much for women. So some of the downsides that we've seen with intermittent fasting is it can affect fertility because you are almost signaling to your body that you're in starvation mode, so it can affect periods and cycles and things like that. And for women, we have different times than men for our hormones, that kind of range throughout the day. So as far as the timing goes, there needs to be, I think, more research on when the optimal time is for someone to eat, male versus female, because we have different cycles with that. And the other downside, or maybe it's a plus side to intermittent fasting, is you can eat whatever you want during those 8 hours or whatever you decide. So you could have candy, you could have cake, you could have chips, you could have anything. It's just within that window. So again, for some people it works, for others, it's not really that beneficial. And then the last kind of type of diets, and I'm putting these all together, are plant-based diets. So plant-based, vegan, vegetarian. So really just limiting your meats and things like that and focusing more on, or ideally focusing more on vegetables. So there have been studies that they show plant-based or vegetarian diets do help also with weight loss and some blood sugar regulation. They also have been shown to help with cholesterol, which can be great. The downsides is that you could still be doing, a plant-based or a vegetarian diet and be getting a lot of crap, basically, because candy can still be vegetarian, sugar can still fall in that. That doesn't rule it out. A lot of those diets also, because of the protein, tend to be more soy focused, which, soy in moderation is okay, but on a daily, every meal kind of thing, it's not ideal. You want to rotate your protein, so that can be bad. And then depending on how you do it, if you don't get enough protein or some other nutrients, you can become nutrient deficient. So that can be problematic for some people. So that is the summary of diets. So we had keto, we had paleo, we had Atkins, intermittent fasting, and then any plant-based or vegetarian diets. So hopefully that was helpful, a quick version of the pros and cons. And if you have any questions, please comment and let me know. Obviously there's so many other diets, macrobiotic, Mediterranean, blood type diet. I mean, it can go on and on. There's always going to be a new diet, so it's always good to know what's involved with those.